As in any new relationship, there is time needed to make these adjustments, but I think we're on track, and it confirms my belief that the UNA and the UNF belong together, that there is strength in numbers, and there are good things ahead of us together. I have, in the course of my travels, covered the country from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, from Fargo, North Dakota to Birmingham, Alabama. I've seen America in a whole new way, and I've often returned inspired by the people I've met. Thank you. By the people I've met and the conversations I've had, and the awareness that throughout this country are kindred souls, kindred spirits who share this cause, who believe that the U.S. has to be well connected to the rest of the world, and that the UN is a unique and valuable instrument for that. I was heartened, as I'm sure you were, to see the polls that were taken earlier this year that remind us that a solid majority, something close to 70% of Americans, do believe that the UN is a good organization and deserves our support. But I know that you know also that that is a silent majority, and that while they support it, it tends to be passive, not active support. So one of our challenges is to activate, to galvanize that interest and that support, and to make sure that those people who care do take the next step. It may be to join UNA. It may be to call up the talk radio host and respond to some statement or add to some discussion. It may be to write the letter to the editor, or especially it may be to speak to their member of Congress and let them know that you care and you vote and you're following their stands on these important issues. And coming from a constituent, as you will certainly experience tomorrow in your congressional visits, that means a great deal. I've always felt that we have a tremendous story to tell, and to remind not just elected officials, but our friends and colleagues and classmates and so on, about what is at stake and why it matters. To remind them that a constructive, visible, and active U.S. in the UN makes all the difference. That it is for this country a unique opportunity to lead by example, to leverage our influence, to put a human face on the other, to connect at all levels of diplomacy, not just at the ambassadorial level, but through the most junior, newest young diplomat who meets others who he or she will surely encounter again through the course of their career. I think we have so many issues that are at the heart of the UN's very broad agenda, that even people who may not be interested in whatever, in reproductive health, say, you can speak to them about climate issues or about peace and security issues. There is always something that we should be able to bring home, and to remind them that the United Nations changes lives and saves lives and is directly connected to our own national interests and indeed our personal interests, our health, our security, our prosperity, our ability to travel and trade and invest, our ability to be seen, perceived by the rest of the world as a country that cares and that is eager and ready to cooperate, and to understand that the UN is a place where we can share the burden, the risk, the cost, and the opportunities of joint efforts. Well, when we hear the UN commitment expressed from the President of the United States and the UN ambassador, as we did this morning, and the Secretary of State, as we have done numbers of times, and we join that with the grassroots voice of informed, responsible, committed American citizens, then we have a powerful meeting of minds, and then we have the chance that we all need to mobilize the American public. Because the U.S. can never be all that it could without that broad and deep public support. And that's why the UNA is more important today than ever. I am not a UN romantic. I doubt you are either. We can be tough critics, but caring critics, and I think that's a healthy role as well, because we want the UN to be the best that it possibly can be, and for reform to proceed apace. So with that, let me close and say that I look forward to my continued travels. This year alone, I have visited Columbus, Atlanta, Asheville, Westchester County, Miami, and on my calendar are Southern California and Texas, and maybe some others as well. I hope I will surely see you along the way. But in the meantime, I hope you keep in mind that we are joined in this cause and in this effort, and I can't imagine anyone I would rather travel with than you. Let me move on to something else, and that is the privilege of making a tribute, a brief tribute and a thank you to your colleague and our great friend Ed Elmendorf. And while I'm speaking, I wonder if I might invite Ed to come up to the stage. Just to remind that Ed served as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the UNA during this critical transition year. And I can't imagine anybody who could have done a better job. He had the knowledge, he had the vision, he had the practical experience to make this happen, and he put forward an enormous amount of time and energy to succeed. You all know that Ed began his career as a Foreign Service officer and worked at the United Nations in the office of Ambassador Adlai Stevenson. That goes back a few years. He then served in the UN itself, then moved on to a long and distinguished career at the World Bank, working on investment and development issues and loan programming and much more in all parts of the world. He is a man of many talents. He has a degree from Yale, a master's in economics from George Washington, a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins, and more. And he's an expert on health strategy and policy as well as UN matters. He's a man of many talents, and I know because of our conversations that he's also has a deep interest in art and architecture and design, and he just returned from an adventurous trip to Uzbekistan. We've been fortunate to have Ed's leadership, and I want to ask if you will join me in conveying our respect and our heartfelt appreciation for his leadership. So, from the UNA and the UNF, we present this to you, Ed, with our deepest thanks.
I didn't really recognize very much myself. There's a man named Ed Elmendorf who worked in the Reagan administration, and I began to wonder whether some of these encomia applied to him and not to me. If it's happened with the alliance between UNA USA and the UN Foundation, it's happened because of the people in this room. It's been everyone. It's been the UNA members around the country. It's been UNA chapter leaders. It's been the leadership in the Council of Chapters and Divisions Steering Committee. It's been the UNA USA staff, and I know how people like Luba Gretchen and others worked on days and nights for months. It's also been the UN Foundation staff, especially Peter Yo, Mike Beard, Gillian Sorenson. I had the privilege of serving as one of 4 facilitators with the 3 of them. They outweighed me quite a bit, I think. as we went through the critical stages of creating the alliance. The alliance has now been created, but it's a work in process, and it will continue to be a work in process, just like the UN itself, for a long time. And it's all of you who will really make it succeed. It cannot be any single individual. We all know that Patrick is really the focal point of it all, but Patrick was very clear yesterday in saying, my agenda is your agenda. And that's the way we will make new UNA really survive and thrive. Remember also, however, it is not just my agenda and your agenda. It is a series of underlying values which really unite all of us in commitment to the UN and what it stands, imperfect though it is now, working on making it better day in and day out, and I certainly hope tomorrow for all of us. But with those words, again, I want to thank you ever so much for your cooperation and for this recognition. I look forward to continuing as a volunteer in the years ahead.